This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, we don't
Well, I
have
just
this one.
copied it.
We're gonna start the meeting, the joint meeting of the finance committee with the select board. And present are from the finance committee, Frank Abbott, Eileen Marcus, and Michelle Miller. And from the select board, we have,
The select board is fully present, Susan Cooper, Scott Jensen, and Justin Maycook in town hall. Just to clarify, you're chairing the meeting, right, Michelle?
well, how about, I was thinking I will chair the meeting until we've kind of divulged all our secrets. Hand it over to you, how's that sound?
I think it would be
I
easier if
think
you
we-
wanna stick with it, just so that
I
you're
just want
And we
responsible.
stick to the agenda.
Yeah, stick to the agenda if I can find it.
Finalize capital policy and procedure.
Yeah,
Was
that's
the
pretty
first thing
much
up on the postage. Anybody?
Okay, so everybody have a copy of our draft of the capital policy?
I don't know.
I do, and I have my comment.
Okay, well, we just, worked on it, from a draft that Melissa gave us, and it seemed like the biggest job to do was to, separate the policy from the procedure and to cut as much verbiage out as I could. So, by the time we got to it last week, this is what we ended up with, and we hope it's useful. And I don't know if you're also have in your hand the, forms that we made.
They're on the back.
They're on the
Okay.
back.
They're on the back page.
And
So
those
do you want
definitely could
some
use more.
little ones that I don't think are that important, but will I help clarify something?
I think what you wanna do is go to, you have it on the,
Editable.
she has it on editable,
So this
so you
is
should,
a substantive, but not large. Right in that first paragraph, you say town's capital planning policy, CPP, for the public's review of proposed capital projects and their support of the CPP. But you're not actually asking for the public support of the policy, you're asking for support of the capital plan.
I'm
So-
not seeing exactly
So
where.
the first sentence,
Yeah,
the first sentence,
This is a problem.
starting right out, right?
Yeah, this is what we tried to, the whole thing
Yeah,
separate.
that's, so
It's
You got it.
fine,
What do you
but I think that's fundamental. It should, instead of reading, in that second line, right, as you get to the end of the public's review of the proposed capital projects and their support of the CPP should be of the capital plan. We're not asking for their support of the policy, we're asking for their support of the plan.
Right.
So it should be just
Yes.
capital plan
Good
CP
catch.
if you wanna give it a short thing, because most of this is about the policy, but it's the plan that the goal is to achieve, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
And there's, that carries through in a bunch of places, like under division of responsibility. Yeah, so there you go, so CP, so some of these got caught, I think. Between the one I have and the one that's here, oh dear. Alright, it's kinda, I will forward this to you. so
But we
you-
agree with that.
I think I think probably we're sick of this and whatever you decide.
Yeah.
Okay, there were a couple of things, assuming they're the same, that are amounts that I just wanted, it's not that I have a problem with them, I just wanted to hear your thoughts. So, maybe make sure that, yeah, prolong the functional life of a capital asset of the town by more than 10 years, tell me how you came up with the 10. I don't
took it
object,
off-
I just
took it
wanna
off
know.
the original,
Okay, but
it's a standard.
why 10?
It's boilerplate.
Yeah, it's just came from another town.
You can change it,
I'm not, I don't have an opinion, I just wanted to know what the 10 was based on, right, because.
We always had a minimum of, and I thought it was
Okay.
like 12, 14.
Well, in the definition of capital, we should have a useful life of 3 years or longer,
And I think that,
because
like,
some of the capital items are trucks.
oh, I had changed that to 5 years.
Oh, did you?
I think,
useful life.
and tech usually was considered no longer a
Yeah.
capital purchase because its useful life is 3 to 5 years.
And-
So, right, so probably we're talking I would have thought 5 years, but I don't have a lot of experience in this, that's why I was just asking, not telling.
Well, I
Well,
will add that most of the vehicles that we own, which would be, I would consider to be capital as far as this plan goes, are estimated, the estimated lifespan is less than 10 years.
Yeah, that's what.
yeah, but
that's-
this is talking about the prolong the functional life of a capital asset item. It's not about the purchase of a capital.
Right,
And
We're
it's also-
taking something and rebuilding it so you can get an additional 10 years out
like the playground.
versus being
Or like a
repaired.
roof. or
So
like a
is
full
this,
building, or
That's
like
the way I
is this
read it.
about vehicles or no?
No, if you
not
read the-
necessarily.
the bottom-
It's about any capital asset.
Sentence, prolong the functional life of a capital asset of the town by more than 10 years.
So an
So
example.
you could say if I rebuilt the fire truck for $150,000, does it prolong that life for 10 years?
A
It's
better-
already an asset.
A better example would be the town hall.
Yeah.
You know,
But does this policy, is it supposed to cover all of the capital that the town owns, like the current capital plan does, where it has the trucks that are not gonna last 10 years?
Yeah, I know,
Yes,
but this,
but that's-
But this is for a
this
capital
line,
improvement project.
this is an improvement project where you would either expense an item to repair it, or you're gonna prolong
Right.
the life for 10 years, so you could say it's capital.
The other questions I have while we're in that section,
Mhm.
we're never gonna do capital improvement projects that aren't focused on public health or safety.
Where's
And we're
that?
never gonna do a capital
No.
improvement project that doesn't reduce or stabilize operating budget costs, like if we build a new building that requires,
it doesn't say.
It says one or more.
it says shall meet all of the following
Oh,
criteria.
you changed that. It used
So-
to say one or more. I don't think it should be all.
I mean, we're gonna have, what if we build a new building for kids, or a new playground? And that actually, Scott said one of the requirements of building a new playground is that it's supposed to be dangerous. So,
He's not wrong.
He's never gonna live it down.
No,
No,
I
I just
don't
want-
disagree with him.
I don't think that,
You minimize the danger, but it's never gonna be.
Exactly. But anyway.
Hello, I've got the ball.
I'm sorry.
Got the whole world.
Whatever.
All right, here's a serious question. Don't tell us what's wrong with it. Tell us what you want it to say.
Well, to
In
be,
other words,
yeah.
We have no issue
I
with
think
the
one,
first
at
one,
least
right?
one or more.
Wait, the first one says ensure compliance. We all agree with that, all right. So shall we change the first sentence, capital improvement projects shall meet
Should
One
say,
or more,
one or more,
which
right?
is what was
or
on
should
the
it
one
say
I
be
had.
evaluated on the following criteria?
That's okay.
And do we wanna change the 10 years thing? Is this clear? If these are improvement projects, we prolong the functional life of a capital asset by more than 10 years. That's, I mean, in a way, it's kind of bogus, yes, Justin.
just to speak more to
Justin.
the process of reviewing the whole document, I mean, I've only had it for a day, and in that time, I haven't been able to come up with edits, so if you wanna go edit by edit, I'm not prepared to do that today. I can provide some larger things that I've gotten at a glance. Like,
That's what we should do.
one question I have is, so when you get to the end, you get the, vehicle heavy equipment replacement request, which I think,
Oh,
is a fairly good thing. Should it be part of the policy, or should it be, a standalone form?
Where are we in vehicle heavy
At the-
Oh,
It's a thing I didn't have, okay.
And then, are we gonna have a similar request form for other capital
Yeah.
purchases?
Right
Yeah.
here, capital.
So, let me
Well,
just,
let him put it-
okay, who's got the ball? Who wants to talk?
I do. You really should throw it to me around. So just so you know, we did not have a policy, right? This is a first time policy that we're implementing. What we tried to do was try to adhere to the budget policy as close as we could, so they mirrored each other, so they work in tandem. And then we looked at places, especially with what Frank's been digging into in a lot of departments, is where we're not getting enough information to evaluate true proposals. And then we added those as attachments in those forms. And we had a big conversation last week about, should we include directions on the form, shouldn't we? And
That's
it
right, I
really-
was just listening.
Yeah, and it really came down to that when Melissa, or whoever the town administrator, the TA, sends out, here's the things, here are the forms you must file, here's what you must do. So it's not as prescribed in the policy, but it is in the operation. So if you want it more prescribed, that's fine, but we were really trying to capture a way of getting more information and getting the departments to think through a lot of these questions more, so we have, more information about a playground, a library, what we need to do, how much it'll really cost, and can really budget more appropriately for it. So we really, as Michelle said, this is our best starting point. If you have things to make it better, we're all for it. Anything you wanna add?
I think you guys did a great job. I just wanna make sure we tweak it so that we're not trapped by the policy.
So you guys
Just
should do that
made some
review.
Right, that's all. So my other questions to that, the 10 years is my first question. The other amounts, sort of for the, and again, this is just me asking because I don't know the answer. It isn't that I have a problem with the numbers. So like under definition of capital, capitalizing should have a useful life of 3 years or longer, which I don't disagree with. It's just, I'm asking about the disjunction between the 3 years and the 10 years again. So I just wanna understand the picture. We'll see when. The numbers of 20 grand and 100 grand
Well-
make sense to me, but.
My understanding
Okay, who's got the phone?
was the 3 years we got from the accountant, we asked what, right, Melissa?
No,
We-
this is all just a form that we
Oh, I
got
thought
from
we asked
another
someone
town.
about what's capital, the state, and look for a definition.
You guys might have
Oops, sorry.
that.
I whammed it at her. I don't want that thing anymore.
Well, I had really a lot of trouble with, for example, above there it says capital improvement project, so then it's got that, and then it's got definition of capital. And maybe we have to take definition of capital and put it up higher on the
Yeah, that's a good idea.
policy in a very deliberate way, but, the definitions, I mean, a capital item should have a useful life, 3 years or longer, is like dopey to, I think, it's like, what is, it's like, where do you, what is a capital
I've heard
item?
that 3-year thing for a long time. I mean, like, it basically, my first memory of it was when we were at an organization when we were talking about replacing computers, and it was no longer considered capital. We went from being a standing mainframe to like a laptop, and now we're like, they're disposable. So that's the only thing I have.
I can give you a history lesson on capital.
Well, I wanna make sure, before, we have a history lesson, that, we learn how to play basketball. I wanna make sure that, I mean, for example, it says a capital item should have, but a capital improvement project is that are we defining a capital improvement project one way and a capital item another way? I mean, are we,
That's what it sounds like.
because a capital item is theoretically something we're moving around, or, it's a computer, or it's a tangible
Xerox
object, whereas a
machine,
capital
it's-
improvement is more of an infrastructure issue, and obviously, they would have different, well, at least obviously, if you're building a building, it's more than $20,000, and,
So I think it's one way or another, we need to have a capital plan that includes everything of significant cost that's not a recurring cost.
yeah.
Because when we have a fuel budget or this budget or that budget that's in the annual operating budget every year, it's kind of accounted for. We need something, and we could set that limit at $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever it may be. But this needs to encompass everything. I don't wanna jump too far ahead. But as far as the rating system goes, I'm a little bit worried about it, because certain things are more about desirability, while others are about what we just need. So like legal requirements, we need to do things legally. So we can't really rate something on a scale of 1 to 10 on how legal it is, and then say, well, it's, you know,
Well,
either
that's
legal or
not
it's not
strictly
legal.
true, because someone could propose something that actually isn't legal.
yeah, but that's like, we need that. So I'm
It's
just
either
thinking,
legal or it's not
I
legal.
recently
It's not
saw it on-
rated on legalities.
I recently saw a set of RFPs, and there was factors of desirability that are similar to kind of this rating system. How desirable is this proposal? But then there were certain must-haves,
Uh-huh,
you know what I'm saying? So
okay.
I don't know the extent to which we really want to do this rating system as in terms of things actually get a score or not. But if we want to do it, I would take something like legal requirements and make that a must-have for the project. And then make a desirability
scale.
with other, with maybe efficiency of services or personnel impact. Whereas how can we rate budgetary constraints? I don't know.
I think Eileen wants to speak to this.
So I can speak to the idea behind this, right? These were the 10 things that we've been using already or that we followed in the policy.
They were already.
And the finance committee, you're gonna hear from us a lot, we have 3 criteria we're looking at everything through. Is it fiscally prudent? Is it administratively efficient? And what's the community impact? So we just took those 10 things and put them under the buckets. For us, some of them is, like you just said, we really believe, especially given what's going on this year, that there are gonna be hard choices to make. So the question is this a legal mandate? And even though we don't wanna do it, we have to, it's like a yes and no. It's not about rating it. It's about, we have to do this, so we can't do something else if we have limited funds. So I think it's more, we were just looking at like what buckets, and we could add to the buckets or take away from the buckets. Desirability is really mostly in community impact, which is where that would show up. But I think we were looking at it as a way to say, is this something we must do, even if we don't want to, or is this something we want to do, and then can we make it happen? So that's how we were going.
So
Sorry.
based on what you're saying, what I would do is I would never rank things and give them a score. I would set those forth as principles to consider for the finance committee, select board, and town administrator to consider. Because the way that it's designed right now, I don't think is gonna make a score that makes sense and is comprehensive.
So I think it could just be changed, I didn't have the ball, including a criteria, looking at the criteria below. It's really criteria we're looking at,
Here's
and not
Melissa's
rating,
turn.
sorry.
So I'm going a different direction. I'm kind of hoping that maybe you will put this off until next year or like slowly going into this, because the things that I need from you tonight to start the budget process and schedule the meetings and send everybody what they need to fill out, you want them to be done with this tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe not wasting too much time trying to, go through the whole thing and get to the stuff that I really need to have for tomorrow to
Okay,
get this scheduled.
so I propose that we, put aside any, more discussion about what we presented you with for the moment, and, that individually, I think we're not gonna make too many changes, although based on what I've heard tonight, there are some new thoughts, and, I think, if we go to the, what's it called? The place where you can make the strikeouts and the comments,
Looking at track changes.
the track changes, then we could certainly use that feature to update it and,
Yes, and
share it later.
you don't
Yeah,
have a
we're open
rating
to them.
form yet
No.
either, so we're.
And rating, I think, also is like rating, it's like, please consider these different scenarios in making a decision.
And Justin and I both have a version of a lighted scale. I know I do.
Oh, sorry.
So I would propose, if this is what the finance committee has agreed upon, why doesn't the select board take it up at the convenience of the select board when we have time, and then come back with an edited version,
Sounds great.
and then we'll just go, we won't do it at joint meetings, but.
No,
Yeah.
that sounds great, I think we exposed some weaknesses or some things that will make it more clear. But anyway, let me turn this over to, what do you need? Do you need COLA? Or you need meeting times, or?
No, I need COLA and, if you're gonna have any constraints on, like, if you're gonna say that people should level fund, or you're gonna say that no more than 2% increases.
Well, Justin was here earlier and he heard me talk about my approach, and I think actually, if I can speak for the finance committee, we kind of are talking about zero budgeting, and that's not necessarily the way it's been done before. But what?
Zero-based.
Zero-based budgeting?
What is zero based? Well,
The budget for
let
town
me just
measure is
finish,
zero.
okay, don't panic.
No, I assumed it meant level funding, but.
No, it doesn't.
Well,
It
does
doesn't.
not.
I would like to.
Cause I was gonna be like, no,
It
it's
is not.
not working
It's
out.
actually-
When
it's
I
Next year.
please talk, I have a ball. Thank you. I will just,
No, I'm just giving you a hard time.
it's good, I like this ball.
Don't let it
No,
take
I'm
home.
not gonna waste any time here. my approach, and I don't, I mean, I think, my fellow members have maybe a slightly different version of this, but is to think of it as a layer cake, and here's zero, right? And the next layer is COLA, is taking the employees' base salaries that they have right now that we anticipate, and putting the COLA, whatever number, and I'm inclined to the 5.6 myself, right there. Okay, you know you gotta pay that. And I'm gonna use the highway department as my working example, because that's the most interesting big budget that we usually have to work with. So the next layer that you're gonna do, and we know already, based on the reserve fund transfers that we've been asked to make tonight, that the highway budget or the fuel budget is gonna be about $30,000 over. And so there's the next layer, chocolate. We know that how much use, right, based on past experience, we're gonna know what the anticipated use is. Yes, maybe we have more trucks, yes, maybe we have less employees, but, we can come in pretty close with a number for what that's gonna be. Okay, then if we go up beyond that, and I think we can extrapolate maybe insurance, associated costs of employment on the next layer, which is crunchy. And then above that, let's say the top layer is fixed. It's 2% over, or is it level? Just as an exercise, we go like, okay, here we are, we're already at the top. So what did you spend last year on all the other things in your budget? And how close, how much realistically, not asking for other stuff, just like, what's the bottom line? And work from there. And that's my understanding or how I would approach it.
I have a little bit of a difference with that. Is it a difference? It's a little bit of a difference. Zero-based budgeting means that you build your budget from the bottom. So instead of saying, which a lot of places do, which is incremental, my budget was 50,000, I'm getting the trend factor 5.4, here's my new budget, allocated. So you're kind of like, I call it like the barnacle theory, right? You have a barnacle, you add another barnacle, they all kind of, you don't really know how many barnacles you got under there. You just keep on rolling it forward and increasing it. Zero-based means you start again. We have some major shifts this year in pricing and staffing and other factors and operations. So we think it's important that each department go back and say, what really do I, there was implementation of a payroll system. What do I really need? What is it really costing me to do business? Because we don't want to be shortchanging, but we do want to be reviewing. My favorite example, like we all been using, if there are binders in Melissa's office and someone's buying them, why are we approving them in an over budget? Like, where are the binders in the town hall, right? We shouldn't be buying them if someone else has them. So what do you really need for the year? Where can we really get that? Who has it? Is it appropriate? Does the select board think that makes sense? Operationally, do we think it makes sense? So that we have a real picture, however we want to layer it, personnel, costs, expenses of what they need for the year. So, their budget might be the same number, it might be allocated very differently. The budget might look very different because like, we were talking about Department of Public Works, they're fully staffed and they've never been before, even though they had very underspending. So it's an idea of really trying to get to where actual costs and budgeting, finishing out this year so we can close this year so we know what to do, and then budgeting more accurately for next year.
So basically, make sure I understand, the concept would be, instead of just taking the previous year's budget and tacking on an add-on.
Correct.
Just start from scratch, build a budget as though, right, okay, that I can totally buy into, thank you for the clarification.
Yay!
I think it's a good idea to make sure that we know where all the money is going and that we're budgeting appropriately. I think what you'll find as you go through the budget is that many of our biggest items are the kind that we've agreed are fixed. Salaries, the school tells us we owe them 1.785 million. There's really not wiggle room. There's some operational accounts or like select board expenses or, each department has, it's funds for basically operating equipment or supplies that are probably the ones that you can look at. I would, maybe a middle ground is see what's been spent in the past years and look at the spending reports and see what accounts maybe weren't spent fully. And I'm not saying don't do the other analysis, I'm just cautioning that I think a lot of our biggest things that account for most of the budgets, there's no wiggle room there.
Yeah, and so we don't, that's it.
I got to bother this for a minute, because I want to say that I remember last year, someone had the bright idea that we should just cut everything 5%, right? And I went through it, you take $3 from Don Clausen and $15 from Melissa, and, everybody's gonna get cut. Well, that's not even possible, because as you say, when you start to look at it, a lot of those big things are fixed. But I think we're kind of at a watershed time, maybe it's just post-COVID or whatever, we're all kind of new to the job, and I think it's just a healthy way to start, because, we may end up exactly where we have been in the past, but at least we'll know. And also, I think it might encourage people to say, I'm pitching in, where can I cut? Well, and I think the fact that the COLA part is gonna be the first thing that we consider, I think is gonna bring people on board.
Right, and we just talked about it, Melissa is getting me the year-end report to see which departments were over and under. And you're right, those that are fixed, great, we just looked at the accounting system, right? Nothing we really have to do there, that's the cost, we can't change it, that's the budget. But where we can look at efficiencies, like should the swap shop have a full-time, is there a different staffing pattern? Are there variable costs? Have costs extremely changed because of supply chain? We don't want to be caught, like we have people coming to us and saying, our budget's gonna be more at the end of the year, in theory, will you approve it? And we're like, no, we will not approve it in theory. Tell us where it's gonna be more and show us, and that needs to be brought up at your budget meeting. If you're under budgeting, if you're not able to meet your public demand, if you're not meeting some of your mandates, we wanna know that now, so we could say, look, this is how short the budget is, like the problem we have in the field budget. We know we're having that problem in the assessor's office, right? And we just saw some numbers like the assessor's office, sorry, Michelle, something else. The assessor's office,
I'm just
we have
thinking of
uncollected taxes, so we totally agree with you, Justin, looking at historical analysis, but we do also believe that the world is different now, and we have to try to rebudget for those things.
Okay, I just want
Does
to
that make sense?
redirect us, because it's 5:00 and we still haven't answered Melissa's question, which is, okay, COLA. What are we, this number, it tells us right here what the effect is gonna be.
Frank.
Yeah, what Melissa gave me, the salaries and the rates of everybody, all the employees, everything from, the select board to the moderator to the tree board and all that. So what we did is we went across and we said, this is what a 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% increase would look like, and this would be the impact on the budget. What we talked about last week in our meeting was, do we add a percentage onto their hourly rate or their salary rate, and then give a bonus as a part of it? So you wouldn't, because the inflation is so high this year, you wouldn't live with a high number years out. So for example, you could add 3% to their hourly rate, and then give them a 2% bonus check. Now, Melissa pointed out she wasn't sure that we could do that. She talked to the accountant. Accountant, I guess, would say no, I'm not sure, but. So Melissa separately and I separately wrote the Division of Local Services and asked them. Zach, at the financial manager, got back and said he told Melissa, but Melissa hasn't seen it so far. So that was all we wrote last Thursday. The other suggestion.
What did they say?
They said, well,
Oh, they didn't.
they didn't say. He told me, the guy said, oh, you've already asked, your town administrator already answered that. I answered her, see her.
Okay.
But then when I wrote her, she goes, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
So that was one suggestion, because the COLA number, as you can see, could be a pretty
Significant.
$5 million budget roughly, 48,000, with the salary cost would be. So that's sort of where we left it last week. Yes, Justin?
I do wonder if that is a good way to proceed, even if it's legal, because while it's something that we're basically, it's gonna be a liability forever into the future, because we usually keep people. That's why you're hesitant to offer it all as a COLA increase, but we don't ever really, in the United States, seem to see inflation go backwards.
Right.
So there's no
I don't
reason.
know if I agree.
You haven't been around long enough.
Young.
In my few years. I haven't really, seen inflation go backwards, so even though it is, we're guaranteeing it pretty much it just compounds over time, it's just how inflation works. And so we kind of be lying to say we're giving you 3% plus a 2% bonus, and then we're taking that 2% bonus away from you because cost of living hasn't gone down 2%. We could do that every year, but then it's like, I just don't see, if inflation went like this all the time and this was zero and we experienced deflation on a regular basis, I could see, okay, we're accounting for it this year, but it may not be there next year, but I don't think that's how it works. I think we should preliminarily say, for a working number, work with 3% COLA, and that will give a placeholder for everyone's budget, and if it goes up, then that's a good thing, and it probably won't go down from 3%, but last year we ran into all these problems where everyone's putting COLA in as zero, and we all know it's going to be something. And so I think 3% would be a good working number if you look at our history of 2%, 3%, 4%. I know things are even more expensive than they've been recently, but the last thing I would want to see happen is we say we're gonna go with 6% or 5% and we end up bringing it down. I think it would make sense to work with 3% and go from there.
So I'm gonna throw out that, yeah, first of all, I am concerned about whether or not there'll be deflation, so I understand the concept of we don't get locked into having to pay an increase on the increase, but since I think it's unlikely in the next couple of years that we're gonna see significant, I'll call it deflation. Some prices may go down, but I don't know, just the way the world is going, there's a lot of uncertainty there. I don't want us to have people who can't afford to heat their house or put gas in their car to come to work. Which, sounds crazy, but I'm not so sure. And I realize that we're doing it on the back of the taxpayers, but Social Security Administration is talking about, what was it, 8.7% increase.
The federal
Massive, that's
4.6
Yeah.
for their employees.
federal's 4.6. Massachusetts is 5.6?
5.4 for the entire budget, I believe. Budget
5.4.
transfer.
5.4. So 3 actually seems low to me, and I'm not like desperate to pump everything up. I'm just saying realistically, having looked at the cost of fuel, the cost of food, and a bunch of other indicators, over the last 2 years, I feel like 3% is low. And so that's me.
Yeah, so
Even I don't wanna pay it, but realistically, I think we have to.
in these situations, I really like to go back to our mission and where we all kind of agree, So like, we agree we want a robust workforce. Does anybody disagree with that? We want a workforce that shows up, comes, and is dedicated, right?
Gotcha.
We want to pay, we want to be competitive with other towns. We want to do the best for our employees to keep them, because we can, as we saw, based on the fuel budget, we can have beautiful trucks, but if we got no one to run them, they're not being used. So I always err on the side of doing, not over the top, but at least the most we can for our employees and our staff. So that's.
I just wanna say that for last year in the budget process, we did put COLA in as basically bringing up to keep competitive salaries. And I think going long into the past, there has never been merit raises in Monterey. We have an HR director now for the first time ever, and we are talking about merit raises, and we have in various departments over the past year or two adjusted salaries to keep them competitive. I'm not saying, underselling on COLA would make us competitive or not, I just don't think that's where we should have define what our salary range is. I think that should be done through an analysis of what surrounding towns is and not through COLA itself, because that's not what COLA is cost of living, right? And so if we don't have competitive salaries, we have to change that
Agreed.
in other ways. COLA is COLA, that's just.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have anything to contribute?
I'll take it. No,
No, it's my turn.
okay.
When I do, I will.
Just checking.
No, it's okay.
I'd like to propose that we, use 3.8, which is what we did last year. And not only that, if you look at the column for 4%, what's that? 38, I mean, just as, as you say, a placeholder. I don't know how to, I mean, do you want to pursue the bonus thing? And
I mean, what I'm hearing, I don't think there's a real consensus to it, so I don't know about the energy. Not, people expressing interest. We did have that a lot in the project sector.
Yeah, I can understand that, but I also think that the other part to look at is the total number in the budget, the total impact that it's gonna have on the budget. But does this include, like, any impacts for, insurance, workers' comp kinds of, the tax part?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah, because based on.
It's based on salary.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but I
It's a
mean, this
percentage.
number is just what.
It's all a
is
percentage,
in-
social security,
I know what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm asking her if she figured those numbers into this number.
She said no.
So the real impact is probably like
It's
a
greater.
third more.
not that high, but.
Right, I mean, because that'll be done in our unemployment and bonds and insurance.
Right, but all I'm saying is the actual cost of whichever column we choose is gonna actually be about a third more.
A little lower because it's part-time workers. I think we figured out like 1.2. Yeah, and I think it's a really good, we totally agree on like doing the whole band survey and figuring out where we are, so it's not anecdotal evidence. That's really important, especially given some of the issues we've seen in transportation. What? That's how you set the salaries. They're called salary bands. This job gets this much. So
Okay.
that's what the HR person will do. She'll do a band survey. People in these credentials and these jobs get paid in this band. People like that. That's what they call it. Do we have any information on other surrounding towns and what they're doing? Because I also want us to, we've been accused of not being collaborative or good. So that was it earlier meeting today. So, Melissa, you want to give those?
No,
All right, so, do we want to have a consensus, or do we wanna just take it back home but Melissa
I
will.
need a number to
Okay.
get everybody to put in this.
What do the other towns do? You don't know? Or you do?
Vote for COLA? No, I don't.
So, we don't need to do one. I think it makes a lot of sense to do it now or sooner than later. And I'm comfortable with Michelle's 3.8%. I don't know where other people are.
I could go with 3.8%. I have a question then. So, in structuring, as we're going forward, since we're doing the zero-based budgeting, would it be possible for people when looking at their budget to consider both the band survey? So in other words, to separate out a COLA component and I'm gonna call it a competitiveness component. Just so we make sure that our salary structure remains competitive. I don't wanna, once we're investing in people and they're become part of a good workforce, I don't wanna see us lose them
No,
because
we're not gonna do
of other towns. No, I know, and so I just wanna see if we all agree that there might be more than one component in building the salary range, not just COLA so now we have three things: the potential of a merit raise, right, because we have opened that possibility by doing
Yeah,
yearly
yeah.
annual reviews, a COLA raise and a competitiveness equalization. I don't have the right words for it, but all different components that we could or could choose not to include when we're doing a budget, including people's salaries.
Well, I think
I'm
we're
just
gonna
putting those
include
things out
all of them, right? Because we're gonna have COLA. That's what I think we have to determine tonight.
And I'm okay with the
And
3.8%.
is,
Yeah.
so,
I would move that Scott, do you have anything to say before I make a motion? I'd move that the select board recommend a preliminary 3.8% to use as the COLA figure when determining budgets. This is not a final figure for the annual budget. Second, is there any other discussion on the select board side? All right, call a vote then.
Sure.
And yes, so that's unanimous approval of the motion.
for the finance committee, you heard what he said. I so moved.
I agree.
Right, so the finance committee unanimously agrees with the select board. Okay, so you've got your COLA 3.8, what else do you want?
Now we need zero-based budgeting.
Well, no, but that's another question that I
Oh,
think
okay.
is worth the discussion.
Okay,
A
so-
couple people here, or the finance committee, wants to do zero-based budgeting. It's the first time the select board is hearing about it. I don't know what Susan and Scott's thoughts are on it, and I don't know if maybe we should return to that next week, because I don't think Melissa should be telling all the departments, hey, we're doing zero-based budgeting, we haven't really come to that consensus yet.
I need you to,
I could, if I could
because I'm
just,
gonna send out all the paperwork and saying, you need to be ready in 2 weeks to give me your budget.
Just remember to explain to them what it
it's
means.
just not that scary.
I don't
No,
think-
I'm not
No,
afraid of
and I'm
it,
saying if you-
I'm just saying we should,
No, but,
Clear on what we
no,
want
but I
them
mean,
to.
in terms of presenting it as a new way of presenting a budget, it's not really a new way. It's just say, put your COLA figure, your employment figures in first, and then build from there, And then what, we're gonna say, see where you end up, like, don't assume you're gonna get more money than you got last year. See where you end up when you've got your COLA, your merit raises, your fuel costs, the things you absolutely know are gonna go out the door, money-wise. Then,
Maybe instead of calling it zero-based budgeting, can we just explain to them that what we're looking for, they should be prepared to fully explain and justify each request they have.
That's exactly right, each
well,
line
that
item.
goes without
Each
saying.
one, right, so I mean, when you said zero-based budgeting, I mean, I have to admit, my heart went a little, and I was like, oh my god, this is
Just that
more
word
like
was
Spartan church, like.
Well,
Supposed
that's,
to be forgiven.
so I just think it's important that people understand it, it's like really just no big deal.
Right, so
But
that
that
by
word
explaining,
is
we're,
there.
if we don't say, we're not asking you to, we're not asking you to level fund, we're not giving you a 2%, we want you to really take a hard look at your
Correct.
budgets and be prepared to fully explain any increases.
Or
Does that sound-
decreases,
Like,
Wait.
fully explain everything.
I think that's the point, is we're not asking to justify increases or decreases, but defend the budget.
correct.
So if it's 100 and you're asking for 150, we don't wanna know the difference between 100 and 150. We wanna
Correct.
know what is
From
the
bottom to the
150.
top.
That's
Let's
exactly
strive
right.
and-
And this, when I was talking to you on Monday, I think it kinda goes along the same vein. We're not budgeting taking last year's as an authority.
Correct.
Right.
We're
That's,
just saying, how much money do you need in each line and why? I think some lines are gonna be really hard to tell, because they're used for such a diverse, I'm just thinking like highway, expenses is used for how many different things, like a shovel here, a part for the machine, but as best as you can, tell us where that money is going from zero to where you are, not based on what your number was last year. We don't care what your number was last year. That's what I'm basing it on.
I'll take it. Justin, that was a perfect explanation. Just think about building the budget from the bottom up. So I'm gonna need this many shovels. I looked at, last year I placed 5, I'm gonna need 10. This is what they're currently going for. This is the number. So,
Do
instead
I
of saying
really
there'll be
need a
3.
new shovel?
And then I think it's incumbent on all of us in the budget meetings
$15.
to really think about, why, I mean, I'm harping on certain departments because I know them, but, like we had an overage with the assessors, like, did you really need to buy binders? Could you have checked with other departments, for the $90, right? Like, we also wanna foster any collaboration or look where there are loose ends that maybe, under Melissa's role of like really looking at how to add efficiencies and collaboration, we can do better in general, and we think that this look will do it. And I love the way you said, it's not about the increase, it's not about the 50 grand more, it's about the entire budget. And most of them, are doing this anyway. They're saying, I'm gonna have this many programs at this much cost, this is how much it is, this is my Zoom, whatever it is. So this is how many phones I have. So it's really just building your budget from scratch is another way. And
I think
depending
we
on
all got that.
No, I wanna make sure, because it's really, I agree, it's not scary.
It's not scary, it's really exciting, in fact, I think I need to do that.
It's the word zero.
It's the word zero.
She called it zero budget, I was like,
I was like, what?
I just,
Had a big slide.
I wanna make sure that you have everything you need.
Justin seemed uncomfortable, so I think I want you guys, are you comfortable with?
I am, I don't know where Scott is.
Well, I'm totally good with that. I think a total assessment is a great idea.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
I know, great.
So historically, when I've been involved in budgets, the ones that have like, now admittedly, sometimes it was in better fiscal times, but still, traditionally, it was like a 3-level thing. This is what we need to do the programs we're currently running without adding anything to it. Here's what we'd like to be at. We think these are the priorities that in the next year I'm gonna make something up, right? Like, I don't know, what's doing the Beartown project? It doesn't really count because we have grant funding for it, but we think that's going to, even though we're paying for it, we think it's gonna add this much to it. Or what if the police department wanted to take on doing the, what's it, Cops for Kids thing? Maybe that costs nothing, I have no idea. But if there's some program, if they wanted to say initiate a program with elders, and again, I'm just making this up because it's something that's been discussed, that would involve a certain amount of monitoring or whatever. Maybe there's no cost because we're already on the payroll, but what if there was a cost? They could say, okay, this is a program we think we'd like to initiate if the town wants us to, here's what we think it would cost. So then we have, that could be either, they could get a thumbs up, yeah, let's do that, or a thumbs down, but we have an associated cost. And then there's like pie in the sky. The police department would like to get body cams. Here's what body cams.
You're
Cameras,
making
cameras.
that up, right?
No, I'm really not. Whatever, I'm just saying, we could say yes or no, but if that's
No,
something they
no,
might,
no.
not this year, but I'm just saying, I needed an example. If that was something they wanted, maybe that's not an immediate priority, but it's a 2-year priority, but they're thinking about what is it gonna cost, what's it gonna involve, and the cost associated, so I was using that as a pie in the sky, right, so 3 levels. Current program, ideal additions, pie
I
in the
think we
sky.
got it.
So I have a talent for restating the obvious, obviously. But,
Sometimes that's helpful.
so what I hear you saying is, I like it, and I hear it a little differently, and we could probably find some terms online. The first level is, instead of saying, is to stand still. We all know it costs more to stand still these days than what you did last year. So the first level is, what does it cost you to do? What are your major functions? Like just to stand still, how much more, right? The second level is to be proactive. There's gonna be a change in law. There's gonna be something coming down the pike. You wanna do an enhancement. And the third level is a wish list.
Yes.
I think
It's called
that's,
the capital plan.
no, it might not be.
It might not be
capital.
No, I'm.
But I think that's a
Stating
great
the
way,
obvious.
instead of capping, saying, for all your departments, first this, then these other projects, enhancements, or major wish lists should be listed separately or budgeted separately. Sorry.
I don't have any
With a
problem
certain vehicle.
with level funding. What if you said level funding? Or
Level
2%,
funding means
or
program.
2%,
I have a
Why
problem.
not aim for that, and then if that's impossible, then it's impossible.
But I think what you guys gave me is good guidance, I
Okay.
think,
You
we
can explain.
we really have a bunch of experienced people that are doing it,
Yeah,
so I don't think it's
they
gonna
already
be,
do it.
they just like a little bit of guidance.
Right.
And just for the record, why I don't like level funding is because it ignores the realities of what's going on in the world.
Right.
And we don't want to
But
seem
you know what
stupid.
I'm saying, I'm saying, if I have the same budget as I had last year, can I survive? No, I can't survive. Okay, then I have to take it to the
Right, the
next
price
one.
is standing, the same price is standing,
But
right.
to ask yourself that question, you would
Yeah,
do
we
that
want them
in
to.
your life, right? I mean, but I wanna point out that
And
it's
I'm curious, keep
20
coming up.
20 past 5. You have everything you need. Is there anything else we wanna talk about tonight? More?
I'm just curious. I've heard several people already say, oh no, not this year. Like, oh my gosh, what is scaring everybody about this particular year's budget?
Well, for all the reasons that we have enumerated, which is that there's a cost of living increase. Because, for example, just the cost of fuel, right? So that's gonna come up against the reality of what the tax revenues are, right? And the different funding sources, but really the big unknown, and I think what we've been working on is this list of capital projects, and like put the town hall at the top of that. You know, we didn't get the grant for the evaluation, there are so many unanswered questions that have to do with the future of this building and the people that operate in it. So that's like a can of worms, and then there's a lot of other projects that, you know, the big culvert out there, the things that people want
Well,
to buy.
you got in the next 2 years in the capital budget, and I know it's not final, but you almost have $1 million in fire equipment. The culvert, if we did the culvert based on what we know now, is $607,000. So you start adding the capital, a higher than normal rate increase for labor costs, you know,
Supply chain issues, which I'm sure
You
you're
know,
very
I
familiar
and
think
with.
just
being
fuel is gonna
fiscally
be-
prudent.
so you could add, you know, your cost could, you know, it's roughly a $5 million budget for this year, it could go up.
And Scott, I don't have the ball, but I do think that by, you know, somewhat of what happened last year,
Okay.
under budgeted, which is part of the concern, because, you know, we're 5 months in and we have 8,000 left in the reserve fund. And, you know, we can discuss the reserve fund number, but it's that, you know, we just had some major differences, and, you know, I think, you know, I just think that's the way it's gonna be. And it's gonna be a hard year.
So the answer to your question for me, Scott, is that I feel like, I understand some of the history of how we came to the current budget, but I'm concerned that it's, it's just the beginning of December, and we're seeing some serious shortfalls because of hope rather than,
Well,
For whatever
lack of knowledge, I think.
That information,
I mean,
fair,
who knew it was gonna become you know, as you go to the gas pump, you know, you just.
well,
Right, you have to
Right.
get.
so
Although,
I'm just worried where else those are gonna, like, I guess for me, my anxiety comes from not knowing where else that's gonna show up, knowing what's happening with inflation, being concerned that the people paying, the flip side is the people paying the taxes may or may not also be getting increases. Where
Yeah.
some of them are on fixed income, even with a social security increase that, I don't know, so
8% of
being
not
torn
much is
between
not
those two
much.
things.
And well, but I do have one note of hope, we just got our $70,000 worth of almonds delivered today from California,
Wow.
and the cost of shipping them went from 10,000 to 6,000.
Wow, that's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
That's good, that's, the other thing I was gonna say,
So does that
Scott,
mean you're gonna
is,
put more almonds in your?
that's really crazy.
Well,
Maybe you wanted more time, maybe it was a mistake, maybe you wanted more time. But I would say that, you know, like this year going through the budget process is, right, we're really trying to look at, like in business a lot, we reforecast, right? 6 months in, who underspent, who overspent, what's right, who's wrong. So we're gonna try to do a little more of that analysis in the budget meetings. You know, we really wanna be helpful. It's not about I gotcha, it's about, okay, why are the shovels more? Why do you need a new one when you know, like really thinking about then making purposeful choices and getting there, because we really need them to pull together and work together in a way that maybe we haven't set that before. So we know we have a bunch of real questions during the budget, and we hope you'll join us in really digging into some of the operations and how it works, and we understand, as Justin was saying, there are things that are not mutable, right? Like, insurance is gonna be insurance, is gonna be insurance, but there are other things that we might be able to, you know, really, look at in a different way, and we'd like to be able to do that.
But I also want to bring into focus that we're not just talking about the operating budget.
Yes.
Which our fundamental concern and our starting place was that every year we hear about the capital plan need to be reviewed, and we've taken that on very seriously. And the result is this, which is good. We're doing all these policies together, and that's all I have to say.
I just wanna say, I'm really appreciative of all of your thinking you're putting into it, and how much I think it's ultimately gonna make for better planning in all the departments, because just getting people thinking about how they think about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes makes big changes.
Exactly, awareness is the first step, Nancy Reagan.
God.
So we're inviting you to Eileen's birthday party next week at this time.
I'm coming to the finance committee on my birthday.
Happy birthday.
I was just there.
Yeah, we're like.
Before we adjourn,
Oh, yes, I should get formal about that.
the financial reserve policy, I tried to take a first stab at editing it to reflect Monterey better, and it's actually really, the credit can mostly go to I copied Great Barrington's policy, because I felt that it fit us much more than our current policy. I hope people can take a look at that at some point, we can consider it at some point.
It's gonna be on our agenda for next week. The two, at least because
To
everything is
start.
in the mix.
So do you wanna take a look at it first maybe, and then
We
send
could
it
do
to us,
it the
so
same
that will
way
be
we
off
did.
of our plate?
That we can do the same thing that we did with the capital plan, just keep.
Iteration.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
sorry, I had some comments on it, can I share those with you, or should I, do you want to look at them right now, or, because we're in a meeting, so we can.
Are they like general, because maybe the finance committee should know them before they look at them.
Yeah,
Maybe you send them to the finance committee, because they're
Okay,
gonna be the
yeah.
next ones taking a look at it.
yeah, and.
But if you
I
can
can do
send it
that.
to me as well now. 'Cause
No problem. I will send it to all of the above.
Good night, Melissa, thank you. And, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn the finance committee.
Very impressive, Michelle, you spared 2 minutes to get my bill.
I second the motion.
All those in favor? Yay. Thank you. I like the ball, thank you.
Is the select board wanna
Except for
adjourn
the
too?
Michelle holding the word, I can't.
Motion
believe
to adjourn,
you're
select
That's actually
board.
much expensive.
Not the
Oh,
almonds.
We're going to,
Yes.
we're going to adjourn the select board meeting, yes,
Mm.
and yes.
Meeting adjourned at
5:27 PM.